Oh. All right. Good morning, everyone. So if you haven't met me, my name is Lauren. I'm on the director's board here with H2O, and I got a few announcements for you real quick. So first off, if you are new here, you've never filled out one of our connection cards. We would love to get your information, be able to connect with you. So we've got paper cards under the seats. We've also got a QR code here up on the screen. So if you're like me, you like to do that little autofill on your phone, save yourself some time, you can fill that out digitally, especially if you have never been to one of our life groups. So if you've never been to one of our life groups, we meet Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. right here in the Student Union in the lounge that's outside the Ingman room. And our life groups are our place where we really get to connect with each other, meet new friends, build a smaller community within a bigger church. And if you've never been to a life group, it's not too late to join. And if you don't want to come by yourself, you want a buddy to come with, go ahead and fill out that connection card for us. We'll make sure somebody sends you a text, follows up, and make sure you get to the right place at the right time. We'd love to meet you there. We also have social media just to keep up with everything we're doing. So you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok now, just to keep up with everything we're doing. So make sure you give us a follow. If you are a regular attender here at H2O and you want to worship the Lord through giving, you can do that online through our website or through our H2O network app. And finally, this is super exciting. Today, we have an interest meeting after church right here up front for the Well. So if you are new to H2O, or if you joined H2O last year during the pandemic and we couldn't really meet in person, we would love to see you at the Well. So if you're ready to dive in, learn more about what it means to be a Christian on a college campus, maybe even eventually get into leadership here in the church, the Well is for you. You also get paired up with a 112 partner who's someone who's going to be your buddy, be your mentor, and help you out with this whole college thing. And I actually have my friend, Claire Criscala, is going to come up here and she's going to tell you a little bit about how the Well has impacted her life.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Hello, hello. How's everybody doing tonight? Or this morning, I mean. How's everybody doing? Good? A little bit tired? All right. So yes, my name is Claire Criscala. I'm a junior law and social thought and psychology double major. I'm from Chicago. Woo-woo. Anybody else from Chicago? No? Oh, woo, woo. Awesome, awesome. Perfect. Great. But yeah, so I'm going to share a little about me and my relationship with the Lord and the Well. So my parents are immigrants from Poland, so I was raised in a Roman Catholic household, but I was really going through the motions and not thinking about church or just like singing the hymns and everything without much thought. I had a baptism, communion, confirmation, but and I knew that something was missing from my life. I just didn't know exactly what that was. And so around middle school and high school years, I just really started struggling with mental health issues and other family issues that were happening and just a bunch of other things. And I just was following the wrong people, going down a really, really bad path. And I was just really, really lost. And so around that time, I began going to a Christian camp in Pennsylvania known as Summer's Best 2 Weeks. And I went the first year, then I went the second year, and it was just like, it just blew my mind to see just Christians like so excited about the Lord, so excited about Jesus. And it was more about a relationship with Christ and with the Lord, but not like feeling shame or guilt or looking like at the Lord as someone higher and above, but more of like just a one-on-one thing that was really, really important to me. And I was searching for love and attention from the wrong things. And they really helped me to realize that I could only receive true satisfaction and fulfillment from the Lord. And so after a lot of prayer, worship, and I even just bought my first Bible going to that camp and reading it and just like learning about just everything. It was one worship night, and I accepted Jesus into my heart, and I was saved. And It was a really, really important experience for me. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, it's amazing. It's like in the most unpredictable and crazy circumstances where the Lord really reaches out to you. But yeah, so that I came back home and just really changed my life around, ended those unhealthy relationships that I was really fearful over. And yeah, just really got really excited about the Word and the gospel, and just this passion and purpose for life opened up in my heart, something I didn't have before. And I was just, yeah, really, really excited. Like the woman at the well, super, super excited. I wanted to tell everybody about it. And eventually, my parents started realizing like a change in my sister and I, because my sister was saved around that time as well. And then we switched churches to a more evangelical Christian, non-denominational church, very similar to H2O. And that changed a lot. My parents were eventually saved, and it was just really, really beautiful to see that. But yeah, so then around that time, so that was around junior year, senior year of high school, and I started really growing my relationship with the Lord as well. And then going into college, when I was visiting universities and things like that, I was really looking for a church as well. And so I actually visited H2O and went to a Sunday service because I was just, interested before I committed to Toledo. And I talked with Pastor Mo and a bunch of other students, and it was really, really cool. And I just felt like I was meant to be here at H2O. And so when I committed, I knew exactly where I wanted to go. I didn't know why, but I knew exactly where I wanted to go. And oh yeah, I was just really, really excited. And so, and everybody here just like welcomed me with open arms. And it was just really good to be at a college campus ministry where it's just, I don't know, just the most important time where there's so much temptation and so many different things that it's really easy to get into, but it's really important to be held accountable and just continuing your relationship with Christ. But anyway, so then after I became a student and I started going to church, someone reached out to me about the well. So raise your hand if you know what the well is or you've heard of it. Awesome. And then raise your hand if you've done the well. Okay. Few more hands, less hands. All right, so yeah, the well really, really changed my life. It really helped me to get involved in the church, but I have a few points here. So the well is a program with 4 parts: mentorship, education, service, and leadership. So first, you are partnered up with a mentor from H2O that is known as a 112 partner, and mine was, shout out to Sarah Birchfield. Woo woo, absolutely incredible. Yeah, super amazing. If you don't know Sarah, please reach out to her. She is like my saving grace. And so, yeah, I would just meet with her and we would just talk about our life and just talk about the Word, which was really, really important. So you get partnered up with a mentor, which is really great, especially, being away from home. It's really important to find a family, and this really, really helped me. Next you will attend meetings, and you're going to learn about H2O, why H2O means H2O, the Lord, and just ways that you can connect with others, and in learning, just learning about H2O and the Lord. And so that was really awesome because we met on evenings on Sunday, and just being able to meet other people and have really great discussions and answer questions and ask questions, which was great. So next is education, then is service. So when you're involved in the well, you begin to have a cycle of different things that you do for the church. So you get involved, whether that's behind the scenes, making this happen. It really humbled me to realize how much has to go into making the Sunday so successful. And so whether also that's working with the children or greeting or anything else. And then fourth is leadership. So once you go through those 3 other things, and then there's a well graduation, which is really excited, you can begin to having different leadership positions through H2O. And so for me, that's been really exciting to it's just really important to uplift others and learn from others, but just pour into people, and that can also really strengthen their relationship with the Lord, and it has for me. And I've just been so grateful for those experiences. But yeah, so if you have any other questions about the well or my story, because that was a really fast version, please reach out to me after church, or rather, I would love to meet with you and talk to you about it. I believe the well is having a meeting, and they'll be meeting up here after service with Ian and Sarah. Yeah, if you're really hesitant about it, I'm telling you, go for it. I know I was, and it really changed my life. So that is my slice of life and a little information about the well. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Claire. So if you want, you could take a second, stand up, and say hi to someone around you, meet someone new.
Ready? All right, good morning, my friends. Good morning. It's good to see you all. Thank you all for coming out this morning. We, as we mentioned before, coming back from a church retreat where we were all at Bellefonte, Ohio for the last 24 hours-ish. Some of us were. So I think I have a picture here. We spent a great weekend, and we fought our hearts out. I think we won 3 of the 5 events for the H2 Olympics. So, woo, way to go, represent. There was some, I'd say, poor officiating on the side of the tug of war that left us on the slipperier side. I'm a physics teacher. We got the wetter side, which means that we had a lower coefficient of friction. So it's not. I would say it's not our fault. We should have swept those categories, but we had a great time. So if we sound like little voices are rough or a little lower on the energy, we're all just recuperating after a long, hard week. A good weekend, but a long weekend. So my name is Tom Stewart. I'm a pastor here. I'm actually filling in for Matt this morning, our other pastor. He's under the weather. He's homesick. So it's going to be a wild ride. Welcome to my TED Talk. So we're going through a series right now called Questions, and there's just something really compelling about questions. I'm a physics teacher for a living, and when I teach in my class, I use questions very strategically to kind of lead and guide my students the way I kind of want them to go. So it's called the Socratic method. It's like instead of giving students answers, you give them questions that send them the right way, which kind of keeps you in this discomfort of not necessarily knowing whether you're right or wrong. And I think like that is where the most growth happens. And so there's an aspect of that to our Christian faith, I think, of just not knowing necessarily 100% certainty about all the things that you believe. And so we're actually going through a series where people ask God questions, where God asks people questions. And so we wanted to make space here at the end of this series, when we get closer to the Thanksgiving time, where we respond to, I don't want to say answer, we respond to your individual questions. So there's actually a QR code in your handout, if you got one. There's also a QR code on the screen, too, where you can submit your own questions. And so the questions I'm going to be talking about today, I'll get here in a second, is what do we do with our questions of faith? And so one of the first steps I'd say is, like, send them in. Like, I don't want to promise that I'll answer your question, but I will respond, and Matt will respond with the best wisdom that we have as informed by our Spirit of God in us and our studies of the Bible. So I want to reiterate, I'm nothing special as a person. I am not an important person by any measure. I'm just a guy who says yes to Jesus sometimes. And I spent a large portion of my life with lots of questions. And so that's what we want to talk about this morning, is what do we do with our questions of faith? Because an aspect of being in a Christian circle or a Christian culture is that there's so much about learning. There's so much emphasis on knowledge, where we have, like, I'm literally giving a talk right now Like the basis of a Sunday is a sermon. Where other churches have Sunday school or Bible study, there's just a really high emphasis on knowledge, which I think is super, super duper important. But we want to create some space here, and especially in this individual community, where we journey with each other's experience. Where on the other side of the coin of knowledge is the way we experience our faith, the way it walks out practically in our lives. And so I don't want to put any expectation that I know anything special or that I have extra knowledge that you guys don't have. That's just not the case. So when it comes to knowledge, there's the other side of experience. So the expectation I want to set is that it's great, it's okay, it's good, better even, to walk in your faith with questions than it is to pretend or act like you have everything answered. And so I think there's just this maybe unhealthy aspect of having a culture that values knowledge, where it also expects knowledge at the end of the day. And so I don't want to set that expectation that you have to know anything or be anything or have any special things happening up in your head where you know things. That it's great, it's wonderful to have questions, even basic questions about your faith. And so we're all in a season of our lives right now, in our young times, where we're maybe experiencing a lot of new things, coming into a bunch of new circles, where, I don't know about you, but when I came to college, I just felt like my faith was a pair of pants that like didn't quite fit me anymore. Like the legs weren't quite long enough, and like I had to like suck in my gut to get the snaps done, and I just felt like I was kind of like outgrowing my faith in a lot of ways. And I think that's why a lot of people don't come to college or don't come to church in college. They don't stick around in Christian circles because they feel like they outgrow their faith. And so I think an aspect of that has to do with how we approach our questions. And so that's where we're going this morning. What do we do with our questions of faith? Where do we go when we question God? That's the driving question this morning. And so the good news for us is that we're in great company. When we have Bible questions or questions about our faith, so does basically everyone in the Bible. Both its authors, the people who wrote it, and its characters, the people in it. Like, literally everyone in the Bible has a bunch of questions. There's a book called Psalms that just has a bunch of poetry and meditations. One of them, Psalm 73, starts with a statement that says, I know God is good. And then it goes on to list all the ways that they don't see that in their life. Like, I know God is good, but bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. The wicked are prospering. Like, where is God in all this? It's like, I say, I believe God is good, and then my practical lived experience doesn't match this. That's in the Bible. There's all kinds of people, characters. One of them that's probably the most famous is Peter. He's one of Jesus' followers. Jesus is out walking on water, and Peter gets out of the boat and is on the water with Jesus, literally miraculously walking on water, and then he looks at the waves and he starts sinking. But for a minute, he's literally in faith, walking on water. And then Jesus picks him up and says, you have little faith, why did you doubt? It's like he was watching Jesus and doing the thing that Jesus was doing, and he still had doubt. There's a guy that we're going to talk about later today, a dad who brings his son to Jesus and says, hey, if you can do anything. And Jesus is like, hold up, if? Do you not believe? And so even this guy who's like taking his son to Jesus to get healed, he still has doubt. John the Baptist, the guy who came before Jesus, he's watched Jesus do these miracles. He's in prison. His life sucks. And so he reaches out to Jesus and says, hey, are you really the guy? Like, yeah, I saw you do all this stuff. I've experienced this, but now my life sucks. And you're still out there. Like, are you sure you're the guy? Like, he still has doubt, even in the face of all that he's seen. And so I think that if that's the people that we come behind, that's our Christian tradition, we should come to the Bible and expect that we also would have doubt as well. And so just a little background about me. I'm a science teacher for a living, and so there was a point in my life I was raised in a tradition that was very certain about what the Bible says and how to interpret it. And then when I started to encounter more scientific worldviews, that was really challenging to my own personal faith. And so I don't know if many of you have found yourselves in a similar boat, so to speak. But I wanted to say, like, I've been there. I've walked there. I've seen a lot of people come out the other side and just have no value in their faith. But I believe the message of the Bible is a good one, and that God is ultimately using us as Christians to restore the world to Him. And so that's where we're gonna kind of go today. So one last Bible verse, just one last person that we're in good company with. At the very end of the book of Matthew, Matthew 28. Jesus has come back from the dead. His disciples are sent out. That's like one of the last things in the book of Matthew. It says this. It says, now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain that Jesus had directed them. So he left. They told him to go to this mountain. When they saw him, they worshiped him. but some doubt it. And I think like that's where we find ourselves. Like we're worshiping him, but some doubt it. Like, and I think I'm in that boat where I would say I worship him, but also I doubt. Like there's room in our Christian walk for us to hold these two things in conflict, where we believe and also we don't believe. And so that's what we're talking about today. Pray with me. God, I just pray for our faith this morning, that you give us a real faith, a practical faith, that you help us to hold things in tension, that our lives don't fall apart, our faith doesn't get shattered, Lord, but we just allow you to bend it in beautiful ways. Father, that you kind of stretch our pants so that we can still fit into them. God, I just pray that you give us eyes to see this morning in a new way, and you give us the faith to walk with you. You know, I pray. Amen. All right, so I'm talking about two things today. How do we walk through our own questions of faith? And then also, how do we walk with others and their questions of faith as well? Because I'll tell you, I don't know which boat you find yourself in. I'm a high doubt person. I'm a person who is very critical, very cynical, very scientific. And so I find myself all the time going, I don't know about that. Like, I kind of doubt that. That's where I find myself most of the time. I don't know if you're there or not, but I'm sure that you love someone who is, if you're not. And so I want to just start and think, like, what is our faith? What is faith? We have this idea that faith are the list of things that we believe in our head and maybe the things that we also don't believe in our faith. That's our faith. It's a list of beliefs and not beliefs, or things that we mentally agree with or mentally disagree with. And I think that that's not exactly a biblical view necessarily. So Hebrews 11 gives us a really great example where it just walks through the faithful people of the Old Testament. And so we'll see a pattern here. Here's what Hebrews 11 says. It says, by faith, Abel made his offering. By faith, Enoch was taken. By faith, Noah built an ark. By faith, Abraham went without knowing where he was going. By faith, Abraham was prepared to offer Isaac. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob. By faith, Jacob wrestled with God. Feel that. By faith, Moses' parents hid him in the river. By faith, Moses took his people out of Egypt. And you kind of get the idea here. I can keep going, but the pattern is, by faith, this person did this thing. It's not by faith, this person believed in predestination. It's by faith, this person did something. And so the main idea this morning that I want to get at is that faith begins with reason, but it leads to action. That faith is what we do, not what we think. It's based on what we think, but faith is our actual beliefs playing themselves out in our lives. Our faith is shown by what we do. That's faith. It's the things that we do from our beliefs. Not necessarily a checklist of all the theology that we agree or disagree with. It's the ways our lives live out that theology. And so you see in Hebrews 11 here, it's about action. It's about behavior. It's about choices. And we get another good example of this. I know I said this before. I'm a giant Bible nerd. So whenever I think about things, I just try to match up stories in the Bible that kind of illustrate this really well. So in Mark 9. In Mark 9, there's this moment where Jesus is out in the crowd and people are bringing him people to get healed. And this dad shows up with his kid. And his kid has, the Bible says he has a spirit, where that spirit's trying to kill him. He can't talk. He throws himself in a fire. Like, he has this spirit. And so the dad shows up and says, hey, I have this kid. Your disciples couldn't drive the spirit out of him. And Jesus kind of has a negative reaction. And even right now, I have no idea why Jesus goes this route. But he says, you unbelieving generation, how long shall I stay with you? How long should I put up with you? Bring me the boy. I was like, that seems really weird. But Jesus has him bring him the boy. And so when they brought him to him, when the spirit saw Jesus, immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell on the ground, rolled on the ground, foamed at the mouth. And Jesus asked the father, how long has the kid been like this? And the dad says this. He says, from childhood. Verse 22, Mark 9:22 says, if it has often thrown him into a fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. And so I just imagine myself, I'm a dad, I have 2 kids. I just imagine myself, one of those kids was like wrecked by something. And Jesus was right there. That's the exact sentence I would say. I wouldn't say, hey, Jesus, here's Javon, can you heal him? I would say, hey, Jesus, if you can do anything, can you please heal my son? And so I wouldn't think twice about putting that if in there, but Jesus calls attention to it. He says, if you can, everything is possible for one who believes. But immediately the boy's father exclaimed, and if this doesn't sum up how I feel, I don't know if anything else does. Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. Because I think the father here is not an example of doubt. He's an example of faith. He is there in his doubt saying, Jesus, if you got anything for me, bring it, please. If you can help me. He's bringing his son. He brings his son to Jesus. His actions show his faith. He brings his son to Jesus. That's his faith in action. That's the action of his faith. And yes, he says, if. But his actions show that he has a heart that does believe. And so that's where I find myself right there. If you can help me, please help me. I believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. That really resonates with me. I wonder if it does with you too. And so the takeaway here is that the father still had doubt, but he lived in it anyway. He lived out his faith even with his doubt. Faith is evidence of what we believe, and it's the evidence that comes out in the way that we live our lives. And so faith is trusting in our reasoning and then acting accordingly. It's our actions, not necessarily what is an itemized list of the things that we believe. And so if the people in the Bible were so close to God, they were literally seeing Jesus, talking to Jesus, if they still had doubt, we can only expect that we would be in the same boat 2,000 years later without literally laying eyes on Jesus doing miracles. And so I want to take a moment here to quickly acknowledge some common questions of faith and then give some practical advice. So if anything, again, this morning sparks any questions in you, or you want to hear more about anything, or you have thoughts or questions that arise this morning, send them into that QR code, please. We'd love to give you some response. And so 2 big questions about the Bible come into play. And so just journey with me on a 5-minute TED Talk, 5-minute nerd TED Talk here about where the Bible came from. The 2 questions that I get all the time as a pastor are, what is the Bible? Like, where did it come from? And then, what are we supposed to do with it? Like, what's the origin of our main source of information? And then how do we interpret it? So let's go down the rabbit hole just for 5 minutes. This is a field of biblical study called Bible composition, where it studies how the Bible came into existence. And so if you want to go get a seminary degree, you can learn all about it. I can tell you it's not that interesting. Just save your time. But we believe at H2O, and I think most Christians do, the Bible was written by people with God carrying them along. It's like they're human hands, human people, human perspectives, human eyes and ears and hands through generations of history that God was interacting with and spurring them on to write the things that they write. And so I personally had a view that, Moses writing the Old Testament just sat down at his desk one day with a quill or a chisel and a hammer, and he starts, pounding out the Old Testament letter by letter. I think that's probably not a helpful view, because the Bible itself doesn't say that. It says Moses wrote these words, and then there's also these other sources that we kind of used in, and even the author kind of writes from a distant perspective, where he's like talking even years later, where he'll say things like, oh, and it's still called that to this day. They kind of call attention to this big time gap between the author's perspective and Moses' perspective. And so I'd say it's a little blurrier than we wish it was about who wrote it and how they wrote it, but I believe all those authors, God carried them each individually along to write the book, the final product book of the Bible that we have today. And so we actually have copies of the Old Testament that date to 200 years before Jesus. In the 1950s, it's called the Dead Sea Scrolls. You could look them up. They're actually all itemized as PDFs online. If you know ancient Hebrew, you can go read them. I don't know ancient Hebrew, but people do. So in the 1950s, they found this little 2,000-year-old copy of the Old Testament. And it's almost word for word what we had before. But even this doesn't give us perfect clarity, because there's what's called textual variance. I'll save you the nerdery, but there are different copies of the Bible that have different small changes, especially between what's called the Septuagint, which is the Greek Old Copy, and the Masoretic text, which is the Hebrew Old Copy. There's 2 very old copies, very similar. They say very similar things, but there's little tiny differences. So that's the Old Testament. New Testament books were written between 50 and 90 AD by people who either saw Jesus or interviewed people who did. And so these were widely circulated by the early church. And so actually there's no copy of the Gospels, the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. There's no ancient copy that exists apart from the other three. So we don't have any just single copies of Matthew or Mark. All four Gospels, when they started getting passed around, got passed around together as like an anthology, like a set. And so the same thing happened with Paul's letters. And you can even read them in the Bible. Paul says, hey, take this letter and give it to the churches in this city. And so the Bible's not trying to lie about what it is. It is an anthology. It's a collection of things that humans wrote through history to show us about God. Inspired by God, written by humans. It's two sides of the same coin. It's divine, God-authored, and human-authored. And so I think the danger comes when we kind of weigh too heavy on one side, or we say, God works people like a pencil, it's only divine, or there's a bunch of errors and flaws and mistakes in it, it's only human. That's not the case. It's divine authorship. And I've been on a swing set on both sides of this coin through my faith journey, where at times I've been like, what? The Bible had humans that actually had a viewpoint that's recorded in the Bible? How dare it? It's not just God's words. That like shattered my faith. And then when I was at my most cynical, I was like, well, the Bible is just a bunch of mistakes that people who thought they knew about God wrote down. So I've been on the swing set. But as I've journeyed through, the more humanity I've seen in the Bible, the more divinity I've seen. It's a human and divine authorship. Two hands working together, two sides of the same coin. And so, in the 300s AD, all the Christians got together and decided, hey, there's some people who are trying to send up some weird writings. Let's say what's old and what's not. And they canonized what we have as the New Testament now. And I think that they were right on the money with the books that they picked. And so that's the first question. Where did the Bible come from? The second one is, what do we do with it? Now that we have it, how do we interpret it? Because the temptation is to take the words of the Bible off the page and just apply them directly. But that problem that I mentioned is that it has a perspective, that when the authors wrote these books, they wrote from their viewpoint, not ours. That we have a cultural viewpoint of literature now, 2,000 years later, that may or may not be similar or the same as the original authors. So we have to be really careful to find the original meaning and then apply that. So we call it adapting and adopting. There's certain things that we just go right off the page and apply. Do not murder. Plug and play. But there are certain other things that are a little bit weird, where Jesus tells his disciples to wash each other's feet. And I have never washed any of your feet. But Jesus told his disciples to do that. And so I think that's one that we actually took the meaning out of, where back in the day it was a chore to wash someone's feet, that you had a person around the house who would wash your feet so that they didn't get too dirty. It's dusty, you're wearing sandals, keep your feet clean. And so the meaning that we've extracted from that text is, go be a servant, go humble yourself. So that no one's washed my feet, in this room at least. And but there's been a lot of people who have helped me at my lowest, who have provided for me in real tangible ways, who have taken care of my kids when I needed them to, or who have helped me in some other way. And so the meaning that we've applied is not necessarily the words, but it's what's under the words, which is serve each other in love. And so that idea is, what did the original author mean when they wrote this? That's how we kind of determine it. And it gets a little blurry, because some people think that the original author was telling us a direct command, and some people think that it was a little more blurry. So there's a lot of other ways that it gets a little blurry when you start looking at it. But the main idea is the Bible informs us from human and God's perspective. All right, so I want to wrap up here with 7 practical tips. What do we do with our doubt? What do we do with other people's doubt? Practical things that we can do to help ourselves and each other walk through our questions of faith. And so the first one is this: be gentle with those who doubt. Be gentle with those who doubt. That's literally just a quote from Jude 22. It says, have mercy with those who doubt. That's just a plug and play. Again, pull the words off the page. They still mean what they were originally meant. Have mercy on those who doubt. That includes ourselves. When I was at my worst, wondering if the Bible actually had anything good to say about the world, I was very hard on myself, very cynical, very critical. But I think that those words, be gentle with those who doubt, are really, really important. There's other Bible verses, too, where Paul is writing to a group of Christians in Greece. And people in Greece were polytheistic. They were worried that the gods had something to do with their life, good or bad. They had to please the gods, or the gods were punishing them. And so they had all these idols, all these statues that they thought represented the divine beings who were like controlling their lives. And so Paul told them, like, hey, if a person doesn't want to eat food that's been offered to those gods because they're worried about what is behind that idol and what's under that food, be patient with them. Don't eat that food around them. But I know that God is more powerful than those fake divine beings, so I'm going to go ahead and eat this food anyway. And so Paul says literally, like, just be patient. If someone isn't there yet in their faith, have compassion and empathy toward them. And so there's this new, I don't know if new is the right word. There's more people talking about their spiritual deconstruction, about the ways that their faith is growing and stretching and changing as they grow up. That's a more talked about topic now than ever has been before. So there's a popular YouTuber, Rhett, from Rhett and Link, who was raised in a Christian tradition. He's no longer a Christian. He describes himself as an optimistic agnostic, where he hopes that God exists, but he's not convinced. And so I think that our stories are really similar, and I've just decided that I'm going to keep walking in my faith, that I'm going to trust the mystery and just keep going. And he's decided that he doesn't think that that's for him anymore. So be patient with those of us who doubt. And so I think that the Christian culture that I want to set here at H2O Toledo is a group of people who love each other enough to not be alarmed by each other's doubt. That in our life groups, in our groups, if we're sitting down having a coffee or a pizza, or if you're of age, one alcoholic beverage together, that you can have a conversation about the things that you have a hard time believing. And you can walk with each other patiently through that time. Point 2, expect doubt to deepen our faith. Again, I think this may be an unspoken expectation that we know more than we do, or that we should know more than we do. And so we're almost afraid to talk about doubt in a room like this, because we're afraid it's going to let people ask the wrong questions and it's going to shatter their faith. But I'm telling you, on the other side of those questions, I found, at least for my life, that my faith is more authentic, more real, more practical. It's made me a better person and a better Christian to ask those questions. And so expect your faith to deepen and not get destroyed. And so we want to hold on to this like certainty that we were kind of raised up in. Like, we know the right things. We can't always do that. And so we have to kind of come to the Bible, come to God, and expect that on the other side of these questions, he's going to draw us closer and more authentically real in our relationship with him. So we can't try to like protect people from their doubt. Like, you can't do it. So I might not believe exactly what I believed when I was 18 or 19 or 20 even, but my relationship with God is deeper now than it was then. Point 3, keep showing up. Keep investing in that faith. Keep investing. Keep being around people. Keep asking. Keep getting lunch and coffee with people. Keep coming. This is another really good example in the Bible of this, where Peter, one of Jesus' closest followers, on his way out, one of the last things that Jesus saw him do was deny that he knew Jesus to a little girl. Like, a little girl was like, hey, weren't you that guy that was with Jesus? He was like, I swear to God, it was not me. I swear. And Jesus saw him. Like, how much would that hurt? Jesus is like literally up there getting beaten. And his best friend is like saying he didn't know him to like a little girl. Huge, colossal failure. Massive moment of lack of faith. Humongous doubting moment for Peter. And after Jesus died, he's kind of like beside himself, missing his friend. He doesn't know what else to do. He's been following this guy for 3 years. He goes back to fishing. He's out fishing again for the first time in 3 years probably. And he sees Jesus on the shore. And he goes back in, and they have this quiet moment where they don't say anything together. And then Jesus asked him, hey, do you love me? And Peter's like, you know that I do. He asked him 3 times. And Peter was grieved by this. And then eventually Jesus says, feed my lambs. Like, take care of my flock. I'm going to be gone again. Now you're the shepherd. Take care of my flock. So even in this colossal moment of failure for Peter, Jesus was right there restoring his faith. Peter kept showing up even after this massive failure. And Jesus restored him restored his friendship, and kept him going. So that's point 3, keep showing up. You see that in the New Testament too. The disciples go from being huddled in a locked room to being out in the square, preaching publicly. They got this like new faith that just like re-energized them. So they kept showing up. Point 4, accept the mystery. We would like to have certainty. We'd like to know things for sure. I don't know about you. I like black and white. But we got to, when there's gray, we got to live in that gray. We can't act like it's black or act like it's white. We got to live in the gray. So we have to read the Bible that we have, not the one that we wish we had. Like, we have the Bible that we have. We can't read more into it than it actually says. The Bible ends at its clarity some points. We have to be okay with that. Point 5, major on the majors. This is one that I've really learned to steer into. Major on the majors. So there's a lot of different doctrine and theology in Christendom. There's a lot of things that we can believe. There are certain things that we need to hold with a closed hand, a tight fist. That Jesus was real, he lived, he died for us, and he restored our relationship with God. That is closed and absolute. That's something that I don't think you could be a Christian unless you believe that sentence. Most other things are in an open-handed category where you could disagree and still follow Jesus closely. And that's uncomfortable to say that a lot of what we believe is an open-handed issue, but it is. So we need to major on the majors. If it's a major topic in theology, we got to stick with it. If it's a minor one, we can be more flexible with it. And so this is actually another example in the Bible. In the early church, there was some questions about what to do with Jewish people. Like, do Christians need to fall in with Jewish people to be a Christian? And there was a lot of questions about that. And what they ended up concluding was you should do the things that that the Jews do as far as marriage. That you should get married, you shouldn't do temple prostitutes and things like that. Like, marriage should be kind of like a one thing. And they also said don't eat food sacrificed to idols. So there's like this moment where they had a lot of things that they could have picked. They picked some major moments, that's it. So point 6, live according to the faith you have. Live according to the faith that you have. So it starts with reason, it leads to action, but go ahead and just walk that faith out. Because I believe, and I think that it's clear in the Bible, the message of the gospel, the message of the Bible is a good message. Love your enemies. Show yourself with radical love that you love Jesus, because that's ultimately the message. Jesus said that the main message is love God, love others. That's why our motto here at H2O is love God, love rockets. That's the main thing we want to major on. Loving God, loving rockets. And so living according to that faith will get you a long way. All right, and last point, point 7, trust and obey. Obey in love, not obligation. That when we follow Jesus closely, when we're falling in love with him, he'll lead us like he wants to lead us. And we have to trust that he's taking us where he wants us to go. And so there's this idea that the earth is passing away. And that, we can all just, why bother recycling if the earth is just going to get burned up by God anyway? And I think that's maybe not helpful. That we, as God's creation on this earth, as God's image, are created here to rule and reign like God called us to rule and reign, to take care of the earth and to take care of the humans around us like he would. And so that's a message I think that's really compelling. That you don't need to have any theology or seminary degree to get into that message of loving God and loving people. And so what I want to do right now is just to ask you to think about the things that chip away at your faith. And don't let them just erode your faith, but get with another human being who also follows Jesus and have a conversation about the things that you question. That get a coffee, get a slice of pizza, get some dinner, get something fun that brings you two together, and then just have a meaningful conversation about all the things that you question about God. And just another first step is that QR code. If we could put that up again. If you have questions of faith that you would like us to address or talk about or respond to or give you our hot take or wisdom on, send them through that QR code. That way we have some guidance on what questions you would like us to address. But the point today is that faith is shown by what we do and less by what we believe mentally. that our faith is an action, not a list of things that we do and do not believe. And so as we go forward today, live out with the faith that you have and follow Jesus closely. I'm going to pray. And the band's going to come back up and do 2 more songs. God, I just pray that you walk with us in our doubt, or that you would help us in our unbelief, like you said that you would, Father. So I pray that you would help us to have the faith to take our issues, our problems, our needs to you. And even if we say even if we are not completely convinced, or even we can't be completely convinced, God, I just pray that you would help us to trust you with those issues, God, that you would give us the faith to walk them out and work them out with the people around us and that are in our lives. God, help us have those conversations. Make this community, our life groups, our Sunday, our individual groups of friends, a safe place to ask questions and to journey through our doubts together, Lord, and just help us to deepen our faith as we learn more and follow you more closely, God. And I pray. Amen.